You begin by imagining yourself floating in a darkness so soft it feels like velvet. Not an empty darkness, but a living one, deep, warm, and humming with quiet energy. You do not feel alone, because in this stillness you sense the faint breath of the cosmos itself, as if space is slowly inhaling around you. The galaxies, scattered like small lanterns in a vast night, drift apart in a gentle outward motion. They are not pushed by winds, nor carried by currents. They simply move because the universe itself is stretching beneath them, like fabric loosening in every direction at once. You let your body rest in this idea, realizing that expansion is not something you hear or see directly. It is something you feel in the imagination, the way you might sense the softness of a room even with your eyes closed. The expansion is everywhere and nowhere, subtle and steady, holding the same gentle pace regardless of where you look. It is not the kind of expansion that comes with force or collision. It is calm, like a whisper, like the slow drifting of fog across a quiet lake. As you listen inwardly, you picture space as a kind of presence. You imagine it holding you the way a tide holds a small boat, buoyant, patient, supporting without pulling. You sense how the galaxies move farther from one another over time, not because they choose to, but because the space between them quietly grows. The motion feels almost tender, a reminder that the universe evolves with a grace that is easy to miss if you try to look for it too quickly. You drift closer to the concept by imagining how light behaves in this expanding world. Even light, that swift messenger, stretches as it travels. It elongates, like a sigh that never ends, turning redder and softer as the universe dilates around it. This stretching is a clue, a subtle signature of the cosmic breath that astronomers learned to read long before the explanation was fully understood. You picture the light carrying information across distances so great they exceed your sense of scale, and you feel a quiet awe at how patient the universe must be to let its messages unfold over billions of years. You place yourself among the galaxies now, moving with them not as a visitor but as a gentle observer drifting at their pace. Their slow retreat from one another feels less like separation and more like a rhythmic dance spreading across endless space. Each galaxy is a glowing island in a widening sea, moving away not in panic but in the simple acceptance of change. You notice the beauty in that, the serenity of a cosmos that grows without strain or resistance. As you watch, you imagine the universe long ago, smaller and denser, like a tightly curled bud waiting to open. The moment the bud began to unfurl, it did so without sound, without flame, without urgency. It expanded simply because that was its nature. That expansion never stopped, and it continues now, not with the violence of a blast, but with the quiet determination of something growing into itself. You sense how the universe does not rush, does not pause, does not reconsider. It just breathes outward, steadily, endlessly. You bring your attention to the scale of time involved in this process. The universe has been expanding for nearly 14 billion years, and yet the motion remains gentle, almost shy. You imagine each billion years as a soft footstep on a path walked slowly, deliberately. In this perspective, your life becomes a single momentary spark, yet it is a spark with the extraordinary capacity to wonder, to ask, to reach across the cosmic dark with curiosity. You sense a quiet pride in that, as if being part of the universe's story is itself a form of belonging. You begin to feel the presence of a mystery woven through all of this. Something unseen guides the expansion, encouraging it to continue, even to accelerate. You can't see it, but you can feel the hint of its influence, like a hand moving just out of sight. Scientists call it dark energy, not because it is shadowy or sinister, but because it remains unknown. It is the name we give to the gentle push that keeps the cosmos expanding faster than before. As you think of this, you realize naming the unknown is a way of softening it, making it familiar enough to hold in thought. You rest in that mystery now, letting it cradle you rather than unsettle you. There is comfort in not knowing everything, in trusting that the universe has rhythms you can feel without fully understanding. The vastness does not overwhelm you. Instead, it loosens the tightness in your mind, like a deep breath easing tension from your chest. You float in the expanding dark, feeling how calm and patient it is. The galaxies drift around you like slow-moving lanterns, each one carrying its own quiet story. You sense your perspective widening, stretching just a little, as if your own awareness is expanding along with the cosmos. You realize that your thoughts can move beyond the boundaries of your body, reaching gently into the space around you, touching concepts as distant as galaxies and as subtle as the fabric of spacetime. You feel a gentleness in this mental expansion, a sense that curiosity itself can be a kind of peace. As the chapter draws toward its resting point, you let the image of the universe breathing stay with you. Each expansion feels like a slow inhale, each moment of reflection like a soft exhale. You remain suspended in this quiet cycle, neither rushing ahead nor drifting too far back. You are simply present, listening to the calm rhythm of the universe's unfolding. And as you rest in that thought, you sense that the cosmos has more stories to share. Stories written in starlight, in distance, and in the delicate stretching of time itself. Stories that begin with the faintest clues carried by light. And so you drift toward the next question, wondering how that ancient light reveals the quiet pace of the universe's widening path. You begin by noticing something delicate, something you cannot touch, but can almost imagine resting on the palm of your hand. It is a beam of starlight, wandering across the universe for billions of years before finally brushing against your awareness. You picture it traveling through expanding space, stretching ever so slightly, like fabric pulled gently by invisible hands. This light has seen more distance than you can fathom, yet it arrives quietly, as if whispering a story meant only for you. As you drift into this moment, you imagine the light leaving its star in colors bluer, brighter, younger. Over time, as it crosses the widening cosmos, it softens. It elongates, its waves stretch like long breaths, and the color shifts toward the red end of the spectrum. This shift, called redshift, becomes one of the universe's most subtle clues. You sense its elegance, how something so faint can speak so clearly about distance and motion. It is not the loud evidence of collisions or explosions. It is the gentle language of stretching. You picture astronomers watching this softened starlight through their telescopes, reading its wavelength like musicians reading sheet music. Every shift in color is a note, a message written not in words, but in changes so delicate they require both patience and trust. You imagine them studying the faintest lines in a spectrum, lines that act like fingerprints of the atoms that shape the light. In those fingerprints, scientists recognize how much the universe has stretched during the light's long journey. You realize now that light is more than illumination. It is a time traveler. It carries memories, recording the shape of the cosmos as it moves through it. When astronomers see that starlight becomes redder the farther away its source is, they understand that the universe does not just expand, it accelerates. Something is encouraging galaxies to drift apart faster and faster, and this something reveals itself through color. You drift deeper into this idea, letting the reddening light swirl softly in your imagination. You picture waves becoming longer, gentler, as if the universe itself is sighing. This sigh is written in the light, encoded across billions of years. And when you follow this encoded message, you begin to see how scientists discovered the acceleration of the cosmos. Not by watching galaxies move in real time, but by noticing how stretched their ancient light had become. You imagine yourself standing on a quiet hillside under a clear night sky. Stars shimmer above you, each one throwing its light across the expanding fabric of space. Some of that light began its journey before Earth existed. Some began before the Milky Way fully formed. And yet, the universe has expanded so much since then that the light arrives changed. It carries the imprint of that expansion in every softened wavelength. You feel humbled by this thought, how something so small can hold so much cosmic memory. As you breathe slowly, you picture starlight as threads woven through the universe. Each thread stretches as space expands, revealing how the cosmos has grown along the way. These threads connect you to events unimaginably distant, making the night sky a tapestry of stories that become clearer the more you learn to read their colors. You feel the softness of this connection, the calmness that comes from knowing that light itself is your guide through the vastness. You follow this thought gently, sensing how astronomers measure not only color but distance. The farther away a galaxy is, the more stretched its light becomes. You imagine this like listening to a familiar melody played slower and slower the farther you stand from the musician. The tune remains recognizable, yet the tempo reveals how far you've drifted. In this way, the universe's expansion becomes audible, almost musical, told through the slowing rhythm of light waves. You feel yourself drifting peacefully through this idea, noticing how every clue is quiet, almost fragile. There is no shattering sound, no cosmic alarm, only the changing color of light, whispered across time. And yet, this whisper tells scientists that something unseen, something pervasive and persistent, is pushing the expansion to speed up. That realization deepens the mystery, wrapping the cosmos in a question so gentle you can rest inside it without fear. You linger with this question. You let the possibilities float around you like soft dust in a sunbeam. What force stretches the universe faster and faster? What energy lies in the empty spaces between galaxies? You don't need to answer. You only need to feel how the mystery opens your sense of wonder. In its presence, the universe feels alive, not with noise but with spaciousness. As the chapter's rhythm slows, you imagine the night sky again, its light stretching, softening, glowing with stories you are just beginning to understand. You feel the peace of knowing that even the faintest clues can reveal profound truths, if you learn to listen gently enough. And as you settle into the quiet, you notice one thought lingering softly. If light can carry the universe's story across billions of years, then the brightest stories of all must be the ones written in sudden, luminous bursts. A thought that leads you toward the cosmic lanterns, the supernovae, that will guide your next steps into the expanding dark. You drift now into a darker corner of the cosmos, a place where silence feels endless and the darkness seems to hold its breath. Here, among the sprawling galaxies, you sense that even the quietest places are waiting for something luminous. You move gently through this expanse, letting your mind settle, letting your thoughts widen with the stars. And as you wander, you notice the soft glimmer of possibility, as if somewhere ahead a spark is preparing to bloom. You arrive at the life of a star, not in its beginning but near its end, an end that will become one of the universe's brightest gifts. You imagine the star first as a shining presence, steady and patient, burning for millions or even billions of years. Then you picture the moment when its calm balance shifts, when its core can no longer hold the weight pressing inward. Something gives, something changes, and in that change, light unwinds in a single brilliant gesture. This gesture is a supernova. You watch from a safe and dreamlike distance, as the star erupts in a burst so radiant it outshines its entire galaxy for a short time. It is not violent to you. It feels slow, poetic, expansive, a cosmic lantern swelling into fullness. For a few weeks, it burns with unwavering brightness, a luminous blossom unfolding in the dark. And even though the star has ended, its final light becomes a message, a measure, a guide. You float closer to this idea, sensing how astronomers rely on certain types of supernovae, specifically type Ia supernovae, to measure distance with remarkable precision. These supernovae are special because they all reach nearly the same peak brightness, no matter where they occur. It is as though the universe has placed a series of identical lanterns across space, each one shining with the same intrinsic glow when it ignites. By comparing how bright a lantern appears to how bright it should be, astronomers can determine how far away it is, the way you might judge the distance of a candle on a dark shoreline by the softness of its flame. You rest in this analogy, imagining yourself holding a lantern of your own. Up close, its glow is steady and unmistakable. But as you drift away, its light becomes dimmer, more delicate, fading gradually with distance. If you knew exactly how bright your lantern was supposed to be, you could tell how far you had traveled simply by the strength of the light reaching your eyes. This is what type Ia supernovae offer to science, a gentle, dependable ruler stretched across the cosmos. As you picture this cosmic measuring, you start to feel the rhythm of discovery. You sense the quiet excitement of astronomers who spent years gathering the faint glimmers of distant supernovae through telescopes that act like eyes peering impossibly far. They compared brightness after brightness, distance after distance, building a map of how the universe expanded over time. Each supernova became a point on a graph, a lantern placed in the timeline of cosmic history. But then something unexpected emerged. You imagine the moment when researchers began to notice a pattern that didn't match the long-held expectation. The galaxies far away weren't just receding, they were receding faster than they should have been. The lanterns were dimmer than the old predictions had allowed. This dimness, subtle yet consistent, whispered the same message again and again. The universe was accelerating. You breathe into that realization, letting the wonder of it spread through you. You picture astronomers, careful and methodical, checking their data, questioning their assumptions, returning to their observations with quiet caution. And yet the evidence remained. The supernovae all told the same gentle but firm story. Something unseen was pushing everything apart, stretching space at an increasing pace. You pause with this thought, sensing the beauty of how fragile clues can reveal immense truths. These lanterns, born in the final breaths of dying stars, became the messengers of something far larger than themselves. They carried information not just about distance, but about the nature of the universe's fate. Their brightness revealed an invisible presence that scientists would later call dark energy. You drift deeper into the glow of a supernova, letting the metaphor expand in your mind. You imagine the explosion as the final exhale of a long life, a release of everything held within. And in that release, the light becomes a tool, a measurement, a whisper from across time. It tells you that even endings become beginnings in a universe shaped by cycles of collapse and illumination. As you float, you imagine the galaxies around you once again, each one filled with countless stars, some destined to someday become lanterns of their own. These future explosions feel distant, serene, inevitable in a gentle way. They will help future scientists trace the expansion of the cosmos, just as the supernovae of the past guided us toward understanding dark energy. You reflect on how calm the process feels, despite the enormity of the events involved. The stars explode, yet their light arrives millions or billions of years later as a soft glow on a telescope sensor. Everything violent becomes gentle with enough time and distance. Everything overwhelming becomes readable. You let this thought settle in your mind, a reminder that perspective softens even the brightest bursts. You drift now through a series of supernovae, scattered like pearls in an otherwise dark sea. Each one marks a specific place and moment in the universe's history. Each one is a fixed brightness, a cosmic lighthouse. And as you gather them in your thoughts, you feel the quiet strength of their consistency. This is how science listens, through patience, repetition, and the faintest differences in light. You imagine the researchers who first pieced together these clues, realizing that the acceleration they discovered would reshape the future of cosmology. Their surprise echoes softly through your imagination. They hadn't been searching for the acceleration. They had stumbled upon it, guided only by the lanterns of dying stars. You feel the delicacy of this revelation, the way it changed everything without shouting. And now, as the chapter begins to settle, you sense yourself moving once more through the vastness. The supernovae fade behind you, their lantern light becoming part of the cosmic background. The question they leave behind lingers gently in your mind. What is the force that urges the universe outward faster and faster? What quiet presence fills space with this subtle push? You let that question float, unanswered for now, like a feather held in still air. You don't need the answer yet, only the feeling of curiosity that softens into calm. And as you drift toward the next chapter, you sense that the story behind this push begins with something simple. The names we give to the unknown, and the way naming helps us touch the mystery without needing to hold it. And so you drift into the next idea, the moment humanity first whispered the name dark energy. You begin this chapter the way you might settle into a soft chair at the end of a long evening. Slowly, without hurry, letting your breath loosen the thoughts circling your mind. You sit with the idea that sometimes the first step toward understanding something vast is simply giving it a name. A name becomes a way of gently touching the unknown, not grasping it, not defining its edges fully, but allowing it to rest within your awareness. As you breathe, you feel how human it is to name things, to soften mystery with language, to build a small bridge of sound towards something immeasurably large. Here, the universe offers you one of its greatest unnamed truths. For most of human history, people assumed that everything in the cosmos behaved like the gravity they knew, the pull of Earth, the fall of objects, the orbits of planets. But the moment astronomers realized the universe wasn't just expanding, but accelerating, they found themselves face to face with something they couldn't see, couldn't hold, couldn't describe. And so, like explorers confronted with a distant shore, they gave it a placeholder. They called it dark energy. You linger on those words now. Dark energy. They sound ominous, but the darkness here is not about shadow or threat. It is simply the darkness of the unlit, the unmeasured, the not yet understood. It is the darkness of a room you have not walked into, one whose doorway you stand beside, listening for hints of shape and movement. Naming it dark is a gentle admission that there is still so much you do not know, and that it's okay. As you breathe in, you imagine the universe as a vast, rippling fabric. Every star, every galaxy, every drifting cloud of ancient gas sits within this fabric the way pearls might lie on silk. If you run your mind's fingertips along this cloth, you can almost sense a faint pressure, a steady tension stretching the weave. This invisible pressure pushes galaxies apart. It urges the fabric to grow, expanding like a slow inhale taken over billions of years. It does not roar or shout. It acts more like a whisper, a subtle force threading through the emptiness between stars. You picture it now not as a violent push but as a quiet encouragement, a soft, cosmic nudge, a gentle persuasion toward openness. Scientists try to describe this phenomenon with equations, graphs, and models. They talk about vacuum energy, about quantum fields, about the cosmological constant. But beneath all that technical scaffolding lies a more poetic idea, that emptiness itself is not truly empty, that space holds potential, that silence carries energy, and that the universe is shaped by forces that do not announce themselves in light. You sit with that thought for a moment. How many things in your own life have shaped you without announcing themselves? A quiet memory that softened you, a moment of kindness you barely noticed at the time, a calm evening that changed the direction of your thoughts. Not all forces are visible. Not all influences shine. Dark energy is like that, a presence sensed through its effects, not its appearance. We know of it because galaxies move differently than expected, because distant supernovae glow fainter than predicted, because the universe behaves as though an unseen hand is guiding its expansion. And yet, we have never detected it directly. It is a story written in the motion of everything else. You let this realization settle into your breath. The universe contains mysteries that can only be known through the echoes they leave behind. You feel a strange comfort in that honesty. There is no pressure to explain everything, no expectation that understanding must be immediate or complete. Some truths unfold slowly, like dawn entering a room. You are allowed to sit with mystery without demanding clarity. As your awareness drifts deeper into the chapter, you imagine yourself floating between galaxies, each one a gentle swirl of stars glowing softly in the dark. The space between them is not empty. It is steeped in this quiet energy, this unseen pressure that pulls you gently outward. You feel the vastness around you, which might once have been overwhelming, now holding a quiet, meditative quality. The spreading of the universe feels less like a dramatic explosion and more like a flower continuing to open, petal by cosmic petal. You picture the early universe. You see it dense and warm, packed with possibilities. Over time, it expands and cools, stretches and transforms. Galaxies take shape, stars ignite, planets form, life stirs. All the while, dark energy waits patiently, subtle and persistent. And then, billions of years later, as galaxies drift so far apart that gravity can no longer hold them close, this quiet energy begins to guide the rhythm. The expansion speeds up. The universe enters a gentler, more spacious phase. It feels almost like watching a long breath being released. In your imagination, you walk through this expanding cosmos as though it were a vast meadow. Galaxies become lanterns in the distance. Nebulae float like slow-moving clouds. And the space between them, the part you used to think of as nothing, feels alive in its own silent way. You sense a presence everywhere, not loud, not forceful, but steady and continuous. A presence that nudges, supports, encourages the universe to grow. You take a moment to notice how naming the unseen is also a way of showing respect. When you say dark energy, you acknowledge the mystery rather than pretending it isn't there. You give yourself permission to wonder. You open a small door for curiosity to enter. You consider how this mirrors your inner world. There are parts of yourself you cannot fully describe, hints of feeling, memory, instinct, intuition. You may not always be able to trace them, but you witness their effects. And in naming them, even with simple words like unease, hope, longing, or calm, you begin to understand them more gently. Naming is not confinement. It is invitation. You breathe with that thought. Softly, slowly, the chapter wraps around you like a warm blanket. Now, you imagine astronomers on Earth watching distant supernovae, measuring how faint they appear, realizing the universe accelerates. You picture the moment they understood what that meant, that the cosmos is not slowing down but speeding up, carried by something they cannot see. Their surprise becomes your sense of wonder. Their uncertainty becomes your quiet curiosity. You return to the idea that dark energy might be woven through the very fabric of space. Some imagine it as a property of the vacuum. Others see it as a field, a potential, a quiet hum in the background of existence. But beneath all theories lies the same message. The universe holds rhythms we cannot yet hear clearly, patterns we glimpse only through motion, not through sight. You drift with that idea, letting it open gently inside you. The unseen can guide. The unmeasured can shape. The unnamed can still be known through its influence. And so, as this chapter draws toward its resting point, you let your breath slow. You picture the universe continuing to expand softly around you, carried by this quiet energy. You let the thought settle that not everything brightens itself to be understood. Some truths glow from within the dark. You begin by closing your eyes and letting the darkness behind them soften. In that soft darkness, you imagine a fabric, nothing fancy, nothing ornate, just a quiet, woven cloth stretched in every direction. It's smooth, cool, and almost alive with potential. You let your mind rest against it, as though space itself is something you can touch. And little by little, you feel that cloth begin to stretch, not with force, not with effort, but with the ease of a slow breath. Space expands gently, the way a chest rises during sleep, calm and rhythmic, lifting everything with it. You picture galaxies resting on this fabric, not nailed down, not glued in place, just existing like beads scattered across the surface of a blanket. When the blanket stretches, the beads drift farther from one another. They're not pushing themselves apart. They're simply being carried by the quiet expansion beneath them. And somehow, that image brings a softness to your thoughts, because it removes the sense of violent motion. The universe isn't bursting outward. It's unfolding. As you sit inside this image, you sense how curious it is that emptiness, of all things, becomes the source of the stretching. Dark energy doesn't push galaxies the way wind pushes a sail. It works on space itself, the unseen stage that everything sits upon. It's almost poetic that nothingness can have an effect, that the quietest ingredient in the universe can guide its fate. You imagine the very threads of this cosmic cloth glowing faintly, the way morning sunlight makes fabric shimmer. You imagine each thread as a tiny connection between points in space, ready to lengthen, ready to relax, always in motion even when you can't perceive it. This fabric doesn't tear. It doesn't crease. It simply follows a rule woven into the cosmos from the beginning. The rule that space can expand, and that expansion can speed up. The more you drift into this imagery, the more you sense how strange it is to think of emptiness as something with structure. But scientists have learned to treat space not as an empty stage but as something with shape, something that bends, stretches, curves. Einstein hinted at this when he described gravity as the warping of spacetime. Massive objects sink into the cosmic cloth, creating gentle hollows. But dark energy does something different. It pulls not on the galaxies but on the fabric itself, encouraging it to stretch in every direction simultaneously. You picture this stretching as a heartbeat, slow, steady, each moment expanding the cloth just a little more. And if you lean in with your imagination, you can almost feel that rhythm like a universal pulse. It's not frantic. It's not urgent. It's simply consistent, like the tide rising and falling against the shore of time. You begin to sense how comforting this perspective can be. The universe isn't rushing. It isn't exploding. It's breathing. And you are part of that breath, carried gently along on the stretching of space. The galaxies move apart not because they're fleeing one another, but because the very fabric they rest on is expanding beneath them. There is no center. There is no edge. Every point in space sees itself as a center of expansion, the same way every point on an inflating balloon moves away from every other point at the same time. This thought settles into you like a quiet truth. You don't need to be at the center to feel connected. You simply need to exist on the fabric, just as all things do. In your mind, you reach down and run your fingers across this cosmic cloth. It feels soft yet firm. It has no weight, no thickness, yet it carries galaxies effortlessly. You sense how dark energy is like a pressure woven into the fibers, a presence that doesn't need to be seen to be felt. It isn't a force like the forces you learned about as a child. It doesn't shove or pull in the way familiar forces do. Instead, it influences the geometry of space, whispering instructions into the quiet structure of the universe. Imagine a loom. Each strand of space is a thread pulled taut. Dark energy is the hand adjusting the tension. Increase the tension, and the threads slowly drift apart. Decrease it, and they relax. But the universe seems committed to increasing that tension, allowing expansion to accelerate over time. Scientists observe this not by watching galaxies directly, but by noticing how the light from them stretches, reddens, softens as it travels across the expanding fabric. You let this sink in. Light itself becomes part of the story, a traveler adapting to the shape of the space it crosses. Every stretch in space becomes a softening in wavelength, a lengthening of color. And every lengthening becomes a clue, a whisper from the past, telling us that space has grown since the light left its source. You picture light as a traveler walking across a field of cloth that is slowly being pulled in all directions. With every step, the threads beneath it stretch just a little more, and the traveler's footsteps lengthen accordingly. Not because the traveler changes, but because the field does. And when the traveler finally reaches your eyes, you see not just the light but the history of the cloth it crossed. The universe, in this way, becomes a storyteller of its own growth. You feel a sense of calm settle over you. The fabric metaphor brings ease, because it shows that expansion is not chaotic. It is rule-bound, predictable, woven into the very nature of space. Dark energy isn't a wild force. It's a steady presence, like background music in a quiet room, influencing everything without drawing attention to itself. You imagine floating above the cosmic cloth, watching it expand beneath you, watching galaxies drift with quiet dignity. No collisions, no urgency, just drifting, just soft, widening space. As you rest in this image, you reflect on how important metaphors are. Without them, the universe feels impossible to hold. But with them, even vast ideas like dark energy feel like something you can cradle in your hands. The cloth stretches again almost imperceptibly. And as it does, you feel yourself drifting gently into a new question, a new mystery. The question of what shapes the texture of this fabric, and what deeper clues might be hidden in the way light moves across it. You drift toward that question now, carried on the expanding threads, wondering what patterns might reveal themselves if you look just a little closer. You begin by letting yourself settle into the stillness around you. At first it feels like silence, the kind of quiet that seems empty, open, uncomplicated. But as you breathe gently and let your awareness soften, you start to feel that even silence has layers. There is always a faint tremble beneath it, a subtle movement that's easy to overlook. And in that sensation, you find a doorway into the strangest idea in modern physics. The idea that the vacuum, the space we call empty, is never truly empty at all. You imagine yourself stepping into that vacuum now, not as a place of nothingness, but as a kind of dark meadow at night. At first you see nothing. The air is still. The sky is still. The world seems quiet. But then, slowly, Tiny flickers begin to appear around you, soft sparks that blink in and blink out again. They are subtle, unpredictable, like fireflies emerging from the grass only to vanish just as quickly. These flickers are the quantum fluctuations that physicists speak about, brief appearances of particles and their opposites, born from nothing and returning to nothing in an instant. You watch them, these little sparks, and you feel the strange beauty of their existence. They don't linger, they don't persist, but their constant coming and going creates a gentle tremor in the fabric of space. And you sense how odd it is that even nothingness has a hum, a quiet restlessness that never fully stops. The vacuum breathes in its own way, not with air, not with sound, but with these tiny bursts of energy that flicker like thoughts passing through a resting mind. The more you watch, the more you feel the idea settle. Emptiness is active. The vacuum is alive with possibility. It has a texture like velvet, soft but not inert. And as you drift deeper into the scene, you sense how this activity might not be just a background detail, not just a curiosity of quantum physics, but something with cosmic consequences. You imagine these fluctuations happening everywhere, in every corner of the universe, in every stretch of darkness between galaxies, between stars, between atoms. There is no place without them. They are not visitors that pass through space. They are part of space itself. They define what the vacuum is. And if they exist everywhere, in the same way, at the same time, their restless activity might produce a kind of subtle pressure, an outward push that permeates the cosmos. You picture it as a gentle swelling, not strong enough to notice when you look at small things. Atoms, planets, even stars, but powerful enough when scaled across the vast emptiness between galaxies. In that emptiness, even the faintest push becomes meaningful. It becomes cumulative. It becomes cosmic. Some scientists propose that vacuum energy, this quiet activity of nothing, is the source of dark energy, the mysterious influence behind the universe's accelerating expansion. You let that idea rest in your mind like a pebble in your hand. Simple, unassuming, but with weight. If the vacuum has energy and that energy exists everywhere, then it acts like a pressure pushing space to stretch. Not because something is forcing it from the outside, but because the vacuum itself naturally tends toward expansion. You breathe with this thought. Expansion becomes not a reaction but an expression. Not a force but a property. The universe grows not because something is driving it, but because the fabric of reality prefers to expand when vacuum energy fills it. It is like a quiet preference written into the equations of existence. You return to the meadow in your mind. The fireflies continue to flicker, appearing and disappearing with no pattern you can follow. You try to catch one, but your hand passes through empty air. They leave no trace, and yet, their combined presence makes the meadow feel alive, dynamic, full of invisible motion. You realize then that this is what scientists mean when they say the vacuum has energy. It's not a reservoir of fuel. It's a constant dance of creation and disappearance, a ballet of nearly invisible sparks. And just like the fireflies give the meadow a sense of life, the fluctuations give the vacuum a sense of pressure, even if you can't feel it directly. As you drift through this space, you sense how unusual this idea truly is. For centuries, emptiness was defined as the absence of everything. No matter, no light, no sound, no substance. But the quantum world paints a different image. Here, emptiness is teeming with potential. Particles rise from the vacuum only to fall back again, like bubbles in a pot of water that never boils over. This simmering, constant and universal, becomes a gentle push that accumulates over billions of years. You imagine a long stretch of cosmic time, a timeline that runs from the earliest moments of the universe until now. In the beginning, matter and radiation dominate, swirling, colliding, shaping stars and galaxies. But as the universe expands, matter becomes sparser. Radiation loses energy. Yet the vacuum energy remains constant, unaffected by stretching or dilution. And gradually, as everything else thins out, the vacuum's quiet pressure becomes the leading influence. The universe, once slowing down in its expansion, begins to accelerate. You picture this transition like a dawn. At first, the sky is dominated by stars, matter, glowing and dense. But as time passes, the light fades just a little, and the subtle glow of the firefly's vacuum energy becomes noticeable, then undeniable. And eventually it rules the night. You sit with this change and feel its peaceful inevitability. If the vacuum energy is truly constant, then its influence grows as space grows. It doesn't overpower. It doesn't force. It simply becomes the primary rhythm by being steady when everything else moves. It's the quietest thing in the universe and also the most enduring. You let yourself appreciate how delicate this idea is. It doesn't claim certainty. Scientists still debate how much of dark energy can be explained this way. There are gaps in the mathematics, mismatches between predictions and observations. But the idea remains beautiful, that nothingness may hold the secret to one of the largest mysteries in the cosmos. You imagine holding a piece of this vacuum energy in your hands, though it has no form, no shape. You imagine feeling its tremble, its activity, its quiet presence. And you imagine how strange it would be to realize that this nothingness is more fundamental than the galaxies, more persistent than the stars, more widespread than light itself. You linger in the meadow one last time. The fireflies flicker around you, some near, some far, each one a tiny glimmer of possibility. They create no wind. They cast no shadows. But their presence, their constant appearing and fading, gives the darkness a texture, a subtle richness. This is what the quantum vacuum is like, not empty, but softly restless. And as you take a breath, you feel yourself drifting toward the next question. A question that rises gently from the flickering lights. If the vacuum is so active, so restless, so full of silent motion, what else might be happening in the depths of space that we have yet to see? You move toward that question now, carried by the quiet activity of nothing, listening for the faintest hint of what else might be waiting in the unseen. You settle into a slower breath, as if preparing to walk into a museum built of thought. The air here is quiet, almost reverent. This is the space where an idea once whispered into physics, lingered for decades, and then returned with a kind of cosmic patience. The idea is gentle, steady, and unhurried, like something that has always existed in the background of things, waiting for your attention. It is the cosmological constant, lambda, a symbol that carries a century of curiosity, doubt, and rediscovery. You imagine Einstein at his desk, late in the evening, the lamplight making a soft circle on the paper. His hands move slowly, thoughtfully, shaping an equation that describes the universe. At that time, the universe was assumed to be static, unchanging, unmoving, eternal. But his equations suggested otherwise. They pointed toward motion, toward expansion or collapse. Neither seemed right to him. The cosmos, in the minds of many, was supposed to be steady, eternal, neither rushing outward nor falling in upon itself. So he added a term, a small, quiet nudge in the mathematics, a balancing force, the cosmological constant. You picture it not as a mistake, but as a breath inserted into the structure of spacetime, a gentle pressure pushing outward, so softly that it felt more philosophical than physical, like placing a finger lightly on a spinning top to keep it stable. First, it worked. The equations held the universe still. But soon the scientific world shifted. Observations began suggesting that the universe was not static after all. Galaxies seemed to be slipping away from one another. Space itself appeared to be stretching. You feel the subtle emotional weight of that moment, the moment Einstein realized he had added something unnecessary. He reportedly called it his greatest blunder. You imagine the sigh he might have released, the quiet disappointment, the sense of having misread the universe. But time reveals strange symmetries. Decades later, the universe offered new clues. Astronomers discovered that not only was the universe expanding, it was accelerating, stretching faster and faster, as if some gentle hand were pressing outward on the cosmic fabric. Suddenly, Einstein's forgotten term no longer looked like a mistake. It looked like a missing piece. You picture the cosmological constant now not as a patch or correction, but as a soft background pressure woven into the structure of spacetime. A presence so subtle you wouldn't feel it locally, yet powerful enough to steer the destiny of galaxies across billions of years. You imagine space as a calm, endless ocean. The cosmological constant is like a slow swell beneath the surface. Not a wave, not turbulence, but a persistent rise. A tide that lifts everything, everywhere, all at once. This pressure is not pushing on the galaxies directly. It's acting on space itself. You feel the difference as if standing in a room whose walls are slowly moving outward. Everything inside drifts apart, not because anything is pushing you, but because the room is expanding beneath your feet. You let your mind rest on this subtlety. The constant doesn't act like wind or gravity or magnetism. It is quieter than that. It is a property of the vacuum of the fabric of existence, a kind of baseline tendency for space to expand. The simplicity of it is soothing, constant, a quiet term, a soft nudge built into the mathematics of the cosmos. But it is also mysterious. Why does the vacuum have this gentle pressure? Why does the universe not only expand but accelerate? You drift through these questions without urgency, as if they are stars you're passing beneath on a slow night journey. You imagine Einstein revisiting his equations. Perhaps, in another timeline, he pauses with wonder at what he originally dismissed. Perhaps he smiles at the idea that the universe is more dynamic, more alive than anyone had expected. Perhaps he sees the cosmological constant not as an error, but as a moment of intuition ahead of its time. You can feel the emotional arc in this idea, the way a thought can be discarded and later rediscovered with newfound meaning. Ideas, like people, sometimes return when the world is finally ready for them. And you let that parallel settle into your breathing. The universe expands in its own way, at its own pace. Understanding also expands. We circle back to old ideas, finding new patterns, new clarity in places once overlooked. You picture lambda in equations now, sitting quietly like a stone at the bottom of a pond. It doesn't create ripples. It simply alters the shape of the water, changes the curve of spacetime in a way that becomes meaningful over immense scales. You imagine running your fingers across a stretched cloth. At first it seems motionless, but if that cloth begins to expand, even a tiny amount, everything on it moves apart, like distant beads sliding away from one another. This is how the cosmological constant behaves, a barely perceptible force that shapes the fate of galaxies. As you drift deeper into the chapter, you feel yourself relaxing into the idea that the universe is not a cold, rigid machine but a place with rhythm and breath. Expansion, acceleration, a gentle outward tendency. These become almost like the heartbeat of spacetime. Einstein's pause and return become your own. You linger on the symmetry, the patience of ideas, the long unfolding of scientific understanding. The cosmological constant becomes more than a mathematical symbol. It becomes a reminder of how knowledge evolves, how certainty softens, how discovery is often a loop rather than a line. You imagine the cosmos expanding around you now, slowly, gracefully, not rushing, not forcing, simply stretching because that is what space does when left to its own nature. Lambda hums in the background like a faint musical note, sustaining the fabric of the universe, shaping its long future. You let the chapter rest here for a moment, suspended. The universe is expanding, and so is your understanding, gently unfolding like petals in slow motion. And in this widening calm, you begin to sense another question rising. A deeper one, a quieter one, waiting just ahead. A question about what drives the universe not just to expand but to evolve, to change, to create structure from simplicity. A question that begins to glow at the horizon, inviting you forward. You begin with a slow breath, letting your awareness drift outward, past the edges of your daily thoughts and into the deep, expansive quiet between galaxies. In that stillness, you sense something subtle waiting for you, something ancient and patient. It feels like a memory the universe has kept tucked away, not in words or images, but in faint ripples spread across unimaginable distances. These ripples are gentle, almost shy, yet they hold a story billions of years old, a story that shaped everything you see. You imagine the universe in its earliest moments, not yet stars or nebulae, but a glowing ocean of light and particles. In that radiant sea, pressure builds and releases, forming waves, sound waves, though no ears exist to hear them. These waves push outward, compressing matter, then relaxing it, like the slow rise and fall of a cosmic breath. You picture these waves traveling through that early plasma, carving patterns that will one day become the grand architecture of galaxies. As you float through this vision, you sense how these ancient ripples leave their mark on the cosmos. When the universe cools enough for light to travel freely, the waves freeze in place, their echoes preserved in the cosmic microwave background. You follow these echoes like faint rings on the surface of a still lake. They are delicate, but they form a scale, a preferred distance that repeats across space, guiding the clustering of galaxies. You feel the quiet beauty of that repetition, a rhythm so vast it unfolds over hundreds of millions of light years. You drift toward that pattern now, imagining galaxies arranged not randomly, but with a gentle preference for spacing shaped by those early waves. It is like walking through a forest where the trees have grown with an unseen gardener's influence, not strictly ordered, yet subtly guided. You sense that this spacing tells a story about expansion, because the distance between these ripples changes as the universe grows. Measuring them is like measuring the breadth of the cosmos. You picture astronomers mapping millions of galaxies, tracing faint patterns in their positions. Each point of light becomes part of a quiet cartographic effort, revealing how space stretches. As you glide among these galaxies, you feel the serenity of that work, the patience it requires, the trust in faint signals, the careful listening to data that whispers rather than shouts. The ripples guide you like landmarks on an otherwise featureless horizon. You follow one ripple outward, sensing how its scale becomes a ruler for cosmic expansion. The larger the universe becomes, the farther apart the ripple marks appear. You imagine laying this ruler across space, noting how its length changes with time, how its measurements speak of acceleration. This method feels almost like listening for a steady heartbeat, one that reveals the quiet force behind expansion without ever showing its face. As you journey deeper into this map, you sense how the universe holds its memories with perfect clarity. The ripples retain their imprint, untouched by the vastness of time. They are reminders that even in its earliest chaos, the cosmos had structure, symmetry, and rhythm. You let yourself rest in that thought, that the universe remembers everything, even the softest vibrations of its beginning. You slow your movement now, drifting among galaxies that shine like calm lanterns in a dark field. You feel the stillness within them, the quiet unfolding of their orbits, the soft gravity that holds them together. You notice how their arrangement reflects the gentle oscillations from the cosmic dawn. It is a map, yes, but also a lullaby, a pattern meant not for navigation but for understanding. You breathe with that rhythm, imagining the waves expanding with you, carrying you through time. You sense how the ripples continue to guide science, helping researchers trace the influence of dark energy, even though its nature remains mysterious. These ancient sound waves become a bridge between what is known and what still waits to be discovered. As you settle into that bridge, you let the thought of the next mystery arrive softly, like a question carried on a distant breeze, wondering what deeper forces might lie beneath these memories the universe keeps. You continue drifting, feeling yourself woven into the grand tapestry of measurements and meaning. You imagine scientists comparing ripple maps taken from different eras of the universe, like holding two photographs side by side to see how time has stretched the space between landmarks. The differences are subtle, but in those subtle shifts lies the story of acceleration. You feel the patience required to detect them, the devotion to precision that turns faint scatterings of galaxies into a revelation about the universe's fate. You sense how these gentle ripples are not merely relics but active participants in your understanding. They allow you to trace cosmic distances the way sailors once used the stars, except here the stars are arranged by the memory of ancient sound. You picture yourself floating with your hand outstretched, brushing against these ripples as though they were soft strands of fabric, each one carrying a whisper from the primordial past. As you move farther, you feel the scale of these ripples growing almost unfathomably large. One crest to the next spans hundreds of millions of light years, yet the pattern remains delicate, like embroidery across the dark. You sense that what gives the universe its structure is not dominance or noise but the quiet consistency of these early vibrations. It is a reminder that gentleness can shape the grandest of forms. You pause within this understanding, letting the texture of the cosmos settle around you. You imagine the early universe filled with a warm, humming glow, each ripple a testament to the interplay between gravity and pressure. That balance created the oscillations, sending them outward until they froze into place, leaving behind a blueprint that would guide the cosmos long after the primordial light cooled. You drift along one of these crests, following it through clusters, filaments, and vast voids. The arrangement feels like a cosmic melody slowed to an infinite tempo. Every galaxy, every cluster, every empty stretch of space participates in the pattern. You feel the unity of it all, the calm reassurance that even the vast universe has its rhythms, its gentle repetitions. You think about how incredible it is that humans, small as dust motes compared to galaxies, can read these patterns. With instruments anchored to a tiny planet, you map echoes that stretch across billions of light-years. You feel the wonder of that ability, the quiet triumph of listening deeply enough to hear these ancient ripples beneath the noise of the modern sky. As you let this realization wash over you, you sense another question forming gently at the edge of your awareness. If these ripples reveal expansion and its acceleration, then what hidden influence guides that acceleration? What silent force moves beneath the measurements, shaping everything with a presence that has yet to be fully understood? You hover in that question, letting it linger without urgency. You feel the universe waiting with you, offering no quick answers, only spaciousness. The ripples have brought you far, but you sense they are leading you toward a deeper layer, one where the force behind expansion becomes more mysterious, more subtle. You drift forward, ready to follow that mystery into the next chapter. You breathe and listen. You begin by letting your awareness settle, as though the vastness of the universe were exhaling around you. In this quiet, you feel the immense scale of cosmic time opening like a slow twilight. You sense not urgency but patience, the kind woven into the deep future of everything. When you imagine the fate of the expanding universe, it is not with fear, but with the same softness you use to imagine a distant horizon, dim, steady, and peaceful. You picture the universe as a great ocean of stars, and you sense how that ocean is thinning. Not quickly, not dramatically, just gently drifting apart, as though each island of light were carried by a long, slow tide. You imagine galaxies moving away from one another, not because they choose to, but because the space between them keeps stretching quietly, invisibly. You feel that stretching the way you might feel a breeze you cannot see, its presence known only through what it moves. As you drift through this imagined future, you sense different paths the cosmos might follow. In one, expansion continues at a steady rhythm, like a long breath that never ends. Galaxies grow farther apart until their light becomes too faint to cross the widening void. In another possibility, dark energy grows stronger over time, stretching space faster and faster, like a fabric being pulled. You picture structures loosening, bonds weakening, everything drifting toward a vast and silent openness. And you let yourself rest in the idea that whatever the future holds, it unfolds slowly. Stars burn for billions of years. Galaxies drift for trillions. The universe does not rush. You picture the far future when star-making fades, when the galaxies stop glowing with newborn light. You imagine this as a kind of cosmic dusk, where old stars shine like embers cooling in a hearth. It is not sadness you feel, it is acceptance, a recognition that even the grandest structures move through their cycles. You think about dark energy, the quiet force guiding all of this. You sense how it works not on matter, but on space itself. It doesn't pull or push objects directly. Instead, it changes the stage beneath them, stretching the very fabric that holds them. It acts with a steadiness you can almost imagine as a pulse, a soft, persistent incline built into the geometry of the cosmos. You feel the wonder of that design, the simplicity and mystery woven together. You imagine traveling far into the future, drifting among galaxies that have grown lonely. Their neighbors have slipped beyond visibility, carried away by the accelerated expansion. Yet inside each galaxy, stars still orbit peacefully, planets still circle their suns. Life may still find its quiet corners. The universe feels vast, but not empty of meaning. It simply grows more spacious, more contemplative, like a room where the lights dim but warmth remains. As you float through this vision, you picture how scientists today try to predict the universe's fate by measuring expansion with exquisite care. They listen to ancient ripples, observe distant supernovae, trace galaxy motions across the sky. You sense the tenderness in that work, the desire to understand something so large using signals so faint. It feels like holding a seashell to your ear and trying to learn the shape of the ocean from what you hear inside. Your thoughts move gently toward the possibility of endless expansion. You imagine the cosmos cooling gradually, its energy spreading thinner and thinner. Stars die, new ones cease to form, and eventually only the faint afterglow of old heat remains. This vision is not bleak when you hold it softly. It is simply another chapter, a long and quiet winter after an extraordinarily bright spring. You sense the peace in that long settling. You then imagine the alternative, the so-called Big Rip, where dark energy grows stronger with time. You picture space stretching so rapidly that galaxies, then stars, then atoms themselves drift apart. But in your mind, even this scenario unfolds slowly, gracefully. Nothing tears violently. Instead, bonds loosen like threads gently sliding from a weave. Whether or not this is the universe's true future, you allow the image to remain soft, a metaphor rather than a prediction. You turn next to the idea of a slowing expansion, perhaps even a future collapse. You imagine the universe pausing, then drawing inward, the way a deep breath eventually exhales. Galaxies approach instead of recede. Stars crowd together. Light brightens across the sky. This possibility feels warm, gathering, like a cosmic embrace. And even if the current evidence suggests expansion will continue, you hold this scenario gently, appreciating its symmetry. Through all these visions, one feeling stays constant: that the universe moves through time with a serenity beyond anything you know on Earth. You feel comfort in that slowness, knowing that cosmic futures unfold across lengths of time so vast they soften all edges. You realize you are not here to predict the end, but to feel the beauty of possibility, the quiet openness of what may come. You let yourself drift deeper into this contemplation, imagining how future beings, if any remain, might look into their darkening sky and wonder about neighbors they can no longer see. They may never know that other galaxies once glimmered nearby, that the universe was once bright with connection. You feel the tenderness of this thought, that cosmic history slowly closes like a book whose earlier chapters fade from view. And yet, even in that fading, meaning persists carried quietly within. You picture long after that, when stars become rare jewels in an immense night. Planets grow cold, gas clouds disperse, and everything settles into a calm that feels almost meditative. You imagine wandering through that era as a traveler, listening for any last echoes of starlight. The silence would be deep, but not empty. It would hold the memory of all the light that ever was. Then you imagine time moving further still, far beyond human scales, until even black holes evaporate in slow whispers of radiation. The universe becomes a place of subtle particles drifting through nearly boundless space. You sense the gentleness of this final stage. No dramatic ending, only a long, soft unwinding. And in the midst of that vision, something inside you relaxes. Because the universe, even at its quietest, remains a story of motion, of transformation, of rhythms too vast to grasp but soothing to imagine. You hold that feeling, letting it settle into you like a final ember glowing in the dark. You breathe with that rhythm, sensing the universe's fate as an endless unfolding. As you listen to the vast quiet, you wonder what deeper forces shape this future, waiting patiently to be understood gently. You begin this last stretch of the journey the way you might begin a quiet evening walk, with a soft exhale, with a sense of settling, with the feeling of your body returning gently to itself. Around you, the universe feels wide and calm, an immeasurable night that expands with patient intention. And in the middle of this vastness, you become aware of something almost surprising. Your presence matters here, not in a loud or demanding way, but as a delicate thread woven into the same cosmic cloth that holds galaxies and wandering starlight. You rest in that awareness for a moment. Your breath mixes with the silence. And slowly, you feel a truth that has always been with you but rarely announces itself. You are a child of expansion, shaped by stars that fused the elements inside your body, stars that lived and died in a universe already stretching outward. Your existence is not separate from the cosmos but a continuation of it, carried by forces older than memory, older than Earth, older than the very concept of time as you know it. When you touch your chest and find the soft rise and fall of your breath, you are touching a rhythm that echoes back through stellar furnaces, through drifting nebulae, through the earliest scattering of atoms across the expanding night. The iron in your blood, the calcium in your bones, the carbon tracing every living thought. They all began in places where gravity held matter close, resisting the widening fabric for long enough to kindle light. Your body is made of moments when the universe gathered itself together, even as it continued to stretch apart. You feel that quiet balance, that tension between expansion and creation. It is inside you. It is everywhere. As you drift through the imagery of cosmic history, you feel the night sky opening above you like a slow-moving story. It's not a story told with urgency, but with the calm of inevitability. The universe expands. Galaxies drift. Stars form, burn, and fade. Planets gather from dust. Life finds its place. You sense how natural it all feels, as if the cosmos is breathing, and you are simply listening. You imagine yourself floating between the stars, not as an observer but as a participant. Every heartbeat, every thought, every memory becomes another small wave moving through the same space that carries the afterglow of the Big Bang. The cosmic microwave background, faint but persistent, feels almost like a lullaby left behind for every future being who might wonder where they come from. And here you are, listening, understanding, belonging. The more you settle into this awareness, the more the universe feels less like a distant abstraction and more like a home. Vast, yes, and full of mysteries that stretch beyond human comprehension, but still a home, one that holds you gently even as it continues to drift outward. The expansion does not push you away. Instead, it creates a spaciousness around you, a softness that invites contemplation. In an expanding universe, there is room for wonder. You let that room fill you. You let the wonder seep in. You picture galaxies like lanterns suspended in the night, each one containing billions of stars, each star a tiny furnace overcoming collapse long enough to shine. These galaxies move apart not because they choose to but because the very fabric beneath them stretches. They are like beads sewn into a cloth that is gently pulled at the edges. The beads do not move across the fabric on their own. The cloth simply grows. And you, your life, your history, your quiet questions, you sit upon this same stretching cloth. You imagine placing your palm against the invisible fabric of space. It feels cool at first, then warm, then almost alive with the faint pressure of dark energy, the gentle but relentless push that guides the universe's expansion. You cannot see it or touch it in any traditional sense, but you feel its presence in metaphor, in the soft insistence that the universe does not remain still. Change is not an interruption, it is the natural flow. You sit within that flow carried by it. As you float in these images, you feel something inside you shift. Not a dramatic revelation but a subtle settling. A recognition that you are both incredibly small and deeply connected to everything. Your size does not diminish your meaning. Your scale does not limit your relationship to the cosmos. You belong here as fully as any star or galaxy. The universe is not something you stand outside of. It is something you arise from. And because of that, the expanding night is not cold or lonely. It is generous. It makes space for you, for every thought you have ever had, for every breath you will ever take. You allow yourself to imagine the far future, not with fear but with calm curiosity. A time when stars grow dimmer, when galaxies drift farther apart, when the night deepens. You envision this not as an ending but as a long, slow exhale, the universe relaxing into itself. The cosmic expansion continues, patient and persistent, like a river flowing steadily toward a sea you cannot yet see. And through all of this, your atoms will continue their quiet journey. They will scatter, rejoin, become part of new forms, new stories, new rhythms. The universe recycles everything, even the parts of you. You rest in that thought, feeling comfort rather than loss. Nothing is wasted. Nothing truly disappears. Not in a universe that carries every moment forward, woven into a tapestry that keeps expanding. You sense, too, the profound gift of awareness, the fact that you can contemplate your place in all of this, that the universe has shaped a mind capable of reflecting on the universe itself. You are the cosmos becoming aware of its own expansion. You are the fabric noticing its stretch. You are the stardust learning to breathe. This awareness is gentle, not heavy. It does not demand conclusions. It simply invites you to feel the connection. You linger in that feeling. You let it soften you. You imagine yourself resting at the edge of a quiet lake, the surface smooth and dark, reflecting distant lights that shimmer like galaxies on water. Each ripple that moves across the lake feels like a tiny echo of cosmic expansion, a reminder that motion exists everywhere, even in the stillness. You dip your fingers into the water and watch the waves spread outward, expanding just as space does. Something about the simplicity of that motion comforts you, tells you that change can be soft, that widening can be peaceful, that you can stretch without breaking. The universe has done this for billions of years, and it will continue. You breathe once more, deeply, gently. You feel your body settle into the rhythm of cosmic time, into the understanding that you are part of something vast yet intimate. The expanding night holds you. It welcomes you, carries you forward. And as you drift toward the next question, you wonder softly what other stories the universe might be waiting to tell.